Welcome to the Cosmic Cadence podcast. We are your hosts, Geneva,
And I'm Kate.
and we are so glad you decided to take a listen to us today. This is our first episode, so we'll tell you a little bit about the podcast. Kate, do you want to start?
Sure. I feel like when did we come up with this concept? It's actually been quite a few years in the making, I would say. I feel like it's because we've realized both of us our love of astrology and music. We wanted to combine that. Also, I feel like in general, somehow we started guessing signs. Like that's one of our favorite
Yeah.
pastimes is just to
Yeah.
guess people's astrology signs. And usually we're right. We're pretty often we're right.
Yeah, I think there was one or two moments where we were kind of just like playing around, guessing signs, and then when we realized we were kind of nailing them, we kind of birthed this idea of like, what if there was a podcast kind of centered around us not only guessing people's birth charts, but also kind of like looking at how it affects their lives and their career and the decisions they've either made or not made. And I think especially as we became closer as friends and we bonded over the fact that we were both Scorpios, and that was kind of like, okay, cool, we're friends now. But once we kind of dived into even each other's charts, we realized like a lot of the traits that we each carry and things like that. So it's definitely been a journey to get to this point, and I'm so glad we're finally here.
Which we will have to do an episode. Maybe that's well, this is our first one, but we'll have one down the line where we'll go through our charts as
Yeah,
well. So stay tuned
totally.
for that.
Yes. So I think for today, and another element of this podcast, outside of interviewing people and going through their charts with them, we both love music. It's kind of the only thing either of us want to do in this life outside of this lovely podcast. Um, and we thought it would be fun to not only go through the birth charts of our favorite artists and entertainment and music people, but also the albums and the music themselves. So today we're going to be talking about an album that means a lot to the both of us, Paramore's All We Know Is Falling. But before we get into that, I just want to put this out there. We're huge, huge believers in manifestation. Haley Williams will be on this podcast.
Haley
I'm
Williams,
saying it now.
you're out there. Please come on our podcast at some point.
Yes, our Capricorn queen. There's so much more we need to know about you. Let us dive into your chart, please. But yeah, so all we know is falling. How old were you when this record came out?
That's what, yeah, I was trying. Well, what year did this come out? Like 2005, 6?
2005. Yeah, which was I feel like an amazing year for us pop punk emo kids growing up in the early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
I was 14 and I had just moved to Mississippi like the year prior and was not enjoying being there.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember for Christmas one year, I got The Sims 2, and there was like the little radio that you could like play on, and like music would come out or whatever. And of course, it was in Simlish. And there was this one song that I will never forget. It was the only song I wanted to listen to. And anytime I played the game, the first thing I would do was take my little sim character over to the radio and put on Pressure by Paramore. And I'm not going to do it today, but I used to know all the
You know
words
the
to it.
English? No, we need to
I
hear
used to know the Simlish. I have to refresh. It's been a minute, but I was so naive and yeah, and this is how you know I was young. I thought like Sims music was like fake music. Like I didn't know it was a real band. I didn't know it was a real song. I was just like, I just love this song and it's the reason I'm going to play this game. Until one day I was watching Fuse and I saw the video and I was like, wait a minute, I know this song. Why is she singing in English? So I immediately went to my computer, Googled the band, and discovered that not only was Haley Williams pretty close to my age, she was also from Mississippi. So I was like, okay, maybe
Oh yeah.
Mississippi's not so bad. And then the rest is history. I was immediately hooked, immediately obsessed.
So yeah, I was trying to think through. I honestly cannot remember um when I started listening to Paramore, it definitely like they were one of the first ones for me, or at least early on. But I don't remember if I listened to Riot before I listened to All We Know Is Falling. I might have gone backwards. But what I do remember is, let me know if you remember this too. Alternative press used to have the issues where it was kind of like the up and coming class. Do you know what I mean? Like it was
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
in the day. Yeah, like Panic at the Disco was there in there and whatnot. And so I remember there's this like 2-page spread of Paramore. I hope we can find the picture online. Maybe we can put that on our Instagram or something. But I specifically remember this photo. Like it just is ingrained in my head. And it had a little blurb. Obviously, the band was Paramore, and it was talking about All We Know Is Falling. And I was just like, Haley looks so cool. I have to listen to this album. And I listened through and it was just life changing. Absolutely life changing. I was gonna ask you too, like, do you remember what your favorite, well, I guess Pressure, was that your favorite song?
Pressure was my favorite song. Emergency was a close second, but as time like kind of developed in between All We Know Is Falling and Riot, Here We Go Again was another one, especially from like the live performances. I love that song so much, but I think all time on the record, if I'm gonna pick one, it's gonna be My Heart. Because talk about an album closer. Like that is how you close an album.
Yes. Um,
What
I
was
yeah,
yours?
I well, I know you love the outro to Here We Go Again live. You love that
How
they're
do
doing
you know that?
that. Okay, so I went through many phases. And actually, I was just talking about this. I forgot what the context was, but weirdly, I noticed that I guess I'm going to call these the dark horses of albums, but track number 8 on albums just is always like it hits. I don't know why. I feel like, yeah, the more we go through albums, maybe it'll come up more, but Conspiracy was like a dark horse favorite for me.
That is a good one.
It's very
That is a good
Scorpio.
one.
Isn't it very Scorpio? I feel like it's very
It is. It is. I feel like actually, no. Conspiracy.
I feel like it's like the you're in your head and like thinking, what like everyone has it against you kind of a thing.
Actually, yeah, okay. Yes, yes. I would argue though, it could also lean very cap. It could
Ooh,
also
yeah,
lean very cap.
I could see that. I mean, obviously I love all of the main hits, All We Know and Pressure, Emergency. Emergency is one of my favorite videos by them, I think. I love that
such
video.
a, it's such an amazing and striking visual. Like I just remember seeing her in that white dress, but she was all like bruised up and bloodied, and I was just like,
Mhm.
what are my eyes taking in right now? It was a very pivotal moment in my development.
I'm trying to think, like, I guess back then I probably saw the music video on MTV or so. Oh no, YouTube. I probably looked these up on YouTube, I think.
My
I'm trying
God,
to
early
recall.
YouTube days, dude. It was probably like the lowest pixel rate in
Oh
existence.
yeah, 100%. I'm sure. Okay, so definitely had a moment with Here We Go Again. That was like uh my breakup song. Like I just always would go to that one because it was kind of like angsty, you know?
It's very
The,
angsty.
the attached to your hip line, like that always got me. I think though, like Franklin, I would say now Franklin
Ooh,
really connects with me because it's just so like
yes.
that nostalgic feeling of wanting to go. And I think like back in the day, like I felt the emotion from it, but I didn't understand it because maybe I was too young. I'm like, what am I going back
Yeah.
to? Like, I'm in it
Yeah.
now listening to it. I'm like, oh yes, Haley. I
Dude, you said
totally
that and I got goosebumps and they have not gone down yet. That talk about a song about like when you hear it and you're the age and you're not understanding, but then to revisit it 10, 15 years later, it's like I actually understand what this song is about now. And imagine them, you know what I mean, writing it and where they're at now. Like if they performed that song today, I would be a puddle on the floor.
That's so true. I wonder, do we think they've done it live? I've never seen it live.
I don't, well, you know what? Let's do a quick little YouTube search. I don't think they have either,
Yeah. I
but
feel like,
maybe
you know, it's funny. Yeah, Paramore is one band that hasn't really done that I can think of, like album shows. I love that, you know, we're getting all these album anniversary shows now. Everyone's coming back, but yeah, Paramore has not, to my knowledge, done that.
they have done it.
No. How did we miss this?
I don't know. Maybe because it was 16 years ago, man, and
Uh,
I wasn't going to shows then. But they were, they did it in Anaheim and they did it acoustic
oh,
a couple times too.
do you think it was that Chain Reaction?
Unfortunately for you, it was at House of Blues.
I didn't
But
even realize there was
in
another
spirit,
venue in Anaheim. So that is acceptable. Yeah, and I've also never seen, I would love to see My Heart live. I've also never seen that one live. Because actually for me as well, I don't know how or why. Like Paramore was literally my like why I am in music, and we can go into that story as well. But like they were my favorite. And somehow they are the band I saw the least back in the day. Like I think I saw like Riot Era at Warped Tour, and it was probably like later on. So let's say maybe like a 2007 Warped Tour.
mm,
I think it was 2007. But I only ever saw them at Warped Tour. And for me personally, if I saw a band at like Bamboozle, because we're from the East Coast, or Warped Tour, I don't necessarily count that as seeing them. Like you know, because it's such a different energy seeing a show outside at a festival versus like an intimate indoor venue for me.
yeah.
So I wish I had seen them more. And now I'm trying to think like when was the first time I saw Paramore live? Like what album cycle? And I think it was possibly self-titled. So like
Yeah, mine was self-titled. It was the Monumentor. It was
yeah, yeah.
Paramore and Fall Out Boy at PNC in good old Holmdel, New Jersey. And it was the event of my summer because I had gone, I think it was like 2014, so 10 years at this point of loving this band and never getting a chance to see them live. My life was changed. My life was changed.
You know, it's funny. We were at that same show, but I didn't know you at that point.
That's so crazy. Wait, were you on the
Yeah.
lawn?
Yeah. Do you
Oh
remember?
my God.
I was on if you're looking at this stage, I was on the right side.
Kate,
We were probably
no,
behind each
no.
other.
We were probably sitting right by each other and had no idea.
Yep. And look at us now.
That's so crazy. Well, we always say that like, it's so funny the parallels of like each of us growing up on the East Coast outside of my little stint down south, like how we would have been friends if we knew each other, because I like even in my friend group, like especially in Mississippi, it was like considered weird to like emo music and like rock music. And there was like this small little sector of us little weirdos that would collect like the AP magazines and like talk about the latest Panic at the Disco video and all of that. So had I had you growing up, I probably would have had a much better experience, especially in Mississippi.
Yeah.
But I think everything worked out the way it needed to. And like we found each other in life when we needed to because now we have this lovely podcast and we can just sit and talk about amazing albums and amazing bands and also astrology, which is a huge thing that we are super super into.
I know, I love that. Well, it's funny you say that because yeah, I went to Catholic school. And there really weren't many people that liked the music I did besides one friend. And thank God I had her because we were able to go to a ton of shows together, but my parents wouldn't let me go to a show. You know, of course I was young, unless I had a buddy. So we would go together. But she actually wasn't a huge Paramore fan. So that's probably why I didn't see Paramore back in the day. But actually, okay, so I have to mention this. I think not to speak for you, but I do feel like one of our favorite friend, but also Paramore moments in the last couple of years was a couple of years ago now. We were at when we were young, and we were watching Paramore, of course, and we were waiting for them to come on, and just the first note of All I Wanted starts. And I don't think they had ever performed all I wanted before, like ever.
Ever, ever, yeah.
And I just looked at Geneva and I was like, I think my jaw dropped. I might have teared up and I was just like, is this really happening right now? Like I was in disbelief.
It was, I like every time I think about that moment, it's just like people talk about out of body experiences, and that was definitely one because I remember standing there and like looking at you and processing what was happening, but also feeling like, wait, what's happening? Why is Kate crying? Why are we falling to the floor? What's going on? What words are coming out of Haley's mouth right now? Like she is not doing the song. And then once it all kind of processed by the time she got to the chorus, it was just a wave of emotions, you know, just kind of being there in that moment with all of those people. And I feel like it was a great way to kind of end that day or even that weekend, because if we were going to talk about when we were young, we're going to talk about when we were young, getting in and being so excited because when that festival got announced, nobody thought it was real. And then to be
Yeah.
on ground and like being so excited for it to actually be a real thing. And I remember being on site and right when the announcement came that they were closing down because of the winds on day one and just
Oh my
feeling
God, I forgot
so
about that
defeated.
actually. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like, wait, what? What do you mean it's not happening? This is my heaven. Like, what? And just kind of being thrust into the windy streets of Las Vegas, trying to find something to fill that hole. So to come back on day two, like, because we were very lucky that we had tickets for both days, like to come back and that's what we are given. It
Yeah.
was just like again, goosebumps every time I think about it, every time I go back to that moment, it's like I'm there again. And it's bittersweet because it's one of those feelings that you can't replicate it. I can't even.
Yeah. And
I'm
we
like
were
welling up with emotions now.
well, I think that's the thing. Like we were so present in that, and I know we've talked about that because we weren't expecting that to be the opener. So we were just so present. And I do remember saying to you, like, I'm just so glad that that moment happened with you because I know that Paramore affected you and means to you what it does to me. So that was just really, really special. And circling back to like how just another memory of like how I got into Paramore. I tell this story often, but literally the reason I wanted to work in music was I was listening to Riot. And of course, you know, when we're teenagers, as we did, like we would be in our rooms and just listening, like your face is right in front of your speaker. And I had Riot playing, it was playing through, and I was flipping through the CD booklet back when CD booklets, like people, you know, had physical CDs. And I just remember like looking through that packet and seeing Fuel by Ramen on the back and being like, wow, like that's amazing. So many bands that I love are on Fuel by Ramen. And Geneva and I have talked about that because we both have a history with Fuel by Ramen. And we were like Geneva said before, you know, had we known each other in high school because of all of these bands, like we would have been friends for sure.
Totally. All right. Should we dive in to All We Know Is Falling and its lovely little birth chart?
Yes, let's do it. It's interesting for albums, right? Because having worked in music, we know sometimes album release dates are a bit arbitrary.
Yes. So I have a theory, and this will change depending on the release, like when it was released and if it had multiple releases or anything like that. But I think, and tell me if you disagree, I'm basing this on the band's slash label slash distribution, whatever's like home country and like main office site. So for example, for All We Know Is Falling, it came out on Fuel by Ramen, which was East Coast based on July 25th, 2005. So for its birth date, even though we know songs were written probably way before then, the album as a whole was delivered out into the world on midnight, July 25th, 2005. So that is what I put in. As far as birthplace, I put New York, New York, because that is where Fuel by Ramen is located. And we will use that. If this is totally off base, then, but we're
Yeah,
here for we're here to have fun, we're assigning birth charts to albums. Like that's not a thing people do. So
we're making it a thing.
we're
Um,
making it a
so
thing.
I would agree with that, and I feel like yeah. So like we should look through obviously the quote unquote official birth chart, but I feel like my opinion of the album will probably vary from what the the date says about the album.
Yes. So let's see. So I haven't looked at it yet. I have it up. Do you want to make your initial guesses for the big three?
Okay, yes. I thought about this a little bit, although I probably should have thought about it more in terms of my explanations, but to me, so for those listening, I guess, I don't know if people know what a sun, moon, and rising sign mean, but those are your big three. So I feel like we should explain the concept of an astrological big three to people.
So, your sun sign is the sign that most people are familiar with. So when like people ask like what's your sign and you're like I'm a Scorpio, that's your sun sign. But what that typically means is like that's who you are like deep down in your core. You can't escape that side of you and the things that make up that part of you. Your moon sign is a great way to kind of like express your emotions. It's how you feel about things. It's how you kind of maneuver through life as far as like fairness and all of that goes, like how you kind of interpret things. And then as far as how it relates to the self, that's who you are when no one's watching. Like when you're home alone on your couch on the weekend, like that's who you really are. And then your rising is how the world perceives you. So that's kind of like the first impression most people get of you. So I remember when I first met Kate, like I had no idea she would skip a Scorpio. And that's not to say Scorpios are mean or anything, but she was very like bubbly and nice and like very friendly. And I just maybe I think even before I tried to officially guess her sign. I guess subconsciously I was probably like, oh, she's definitely a Libra. Like she loves people and all of that. And then I found out she was a Scorpio and I was like, oh, twin. And that's kind of like the basis. And then there's other elements of your chart that we can get into in later podcasts, like your Mercury, which goes into how you communicate, or your Venus, which depends on, gender for how it affects different areas of your life. But today, we are focusing on the big three for the biggest album in both of our lives, All We Know Is Falling by Paramore. So, your guesses.
Okay, so yes, I, as I said, I haven't really thought through I'm going with my gut here. This is my gut.
I think
Um,
that's what we typically do. So
yeah,
follow your gut.
and it's usually, yeah, it usually leads us in the right direction. Um, okay, so I'm going to say for a sun sign, as far as like what this album is at its core, I was gonna say Cancer. Um,
Mm.
and the reason that I say Cancer is that it is actually a very emotional album. I feel like there's a lot of, big emotional concepts on this album, and there's a bit of a moodiness to it. But so with that, I say that the rising sign for me is an Aries because I feel like it's very fiery. And I haven't necessarily thought through the moon sign, so I guess I have to think through that right now. But what are your thoughts on the moon sign?
So, part of me had a universal download when you were speaking about the cancer of it all. And I was like, well, maybe it's not the sun, but that could be the moon. But then the more I was kind of thinking through some of the songs, I was leaning more towards Gemini,
As the
just as the moon, just because it feels like, especially thinking back to that time and like the band was so young and we know the history of Paramore and all of the tumultuous ups and downs that they've had. it feels very Gemini in the sense of like that sense of belong. So one of the things that that people say about Geminis is like it's the twin sign, right? So like they always long and look for the similarities in whoever they meet. They're searching for their twin. And
Mhm.
it's a kind of beautiful way to look at Geminis. Um, and I feel like this album very much has that like searching for something greater, like longing for like someone to feel the same way that they do. And then when you get into the stereotypical definition of a Gemini, of it being like two-sided, you know, you never know what you're gonna get. I get that with this album too, you know, because you have like the angsty, I don't want to call them love songs, but like, you know, those very like raw emotion, anger filled with energy and rage. But then you have like the softer songs, like My Heart and Franklin, where it's a
Mhm.
little more introspective, you know. So it's very dual-sided, this album. So I'm feeling like the moon is a Gemini.
I like that. Yeah, I totally would subscribe to that. And I do feel like, Geminis are so good at communicating
Yeah.
on this album. Like it's kind of like, they're laying their heart out on their sleeve. Yeah, and just really putting every emotion out there and being honest, I feel like is really a big concept on this album. But that's why I said Cancer as well, for like at its core. There's just so much like Franklin is such a Cancer song to me.
Yes. So my rising guess would either be Cancer or Pisces feels crazy. Let's go with Cancer because I think it
That's a water.
presents itself as a very emotional record. And we know as water signs, we are very emotional people, but I think it's not the typical Pisces ways of being emotional. It is very much kind of like what you were saying with the nurturing and caring and that kind of like longing for home, sense. That's giving Cancer to me on the rising sign.
Okay, cool. And so what was your so you think like Cancer rising.
Yeah.
So what is your sun sign guess?
Oh, I'm being annoying and basing it on the release date. It's Leo.
Okay, but
There,
I said,
that's where the fire's coming from.
okay, that makes sense. I did say Aries. I felt the fire in
Yeah.
there. It's just it feels like that young teenage what's that word? Like when you're angst, I guess, is what
Yeah.
I'm thinking. It's very angsty.
It
Uh
is.
just like, especially like I think you were saying this before, right? The love songs. I'm trying to like here we go again. I wish I wrote that. Like
Same.
I wish I just like wrote that in letter form to an ex and sent it and I could claim that.
Okay, so are you ready for the reveal?
Yeah, I'm so excited.
Okay, I am too, because
It's
we're
our first
literally doing
time.
this in real time.
We've never thought about an album in this way before.
Oh my God.
Were we
Oh
good
my God.
on point?
Okay, no, no. I mean, well, you were kind of close on one thing. So the sun is a Leo,
Which yeah.
July 25th. We knew. However, you called it with the fieriness because the moon is in Aries.
Ah, that makes sense.
It does make sense. And it's very, 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 very funny that the energy I was feeling that was giving me Gemini for the moon is actually Aries. Because seeing it out, I was like, wait, no, actually, Aries. This is definitely an Aries moon album. But the ascendant is very, very interesting to me. And it's a reminder to always follow your gut. Because when you were talking originally, my thought for ascendant was what it is. And
Mhm.
I thought myself out of it the more you
Yeah.
started talking about Cancer.
Is it still a water sign?
No.
Is it an earth sign?
No,
So that's a lot of fire if it's fire.
it's not.
Okay.
That leaves one. It's an air sign.
I kind of want to guess since why not?
Yeah.
Air. Okay, so that's either Gemini, Libra, or Aquarius. Oh, you know what? I could see Aquarius. Is it Libra
And
though?
it's Libra. It's Libra. And I'm so mad I didn't say that because yes, like,
Why were you
yes.
getting that? What tell me your process.
So originally when I was thinking about this, like this album, and again, going back to when I was thinking Gemini for the moon, there is the two sides of this album, and Gemini is not the only two-sided sign. Libra, two
Mhm.
scales, balance, fairness, what's right. That is what this album is at its freaking core. Like, there's so many songs I think that kind of have that like we keep using this word, but that angsty narrative. And when you think about what that actually means, especially when you're a teenager, it's like you're being pulled in all these different directions, like whether internally, externally. And I think this album kind of has that energy throughout, you
Yeah.
know? But there's also that sweet side and like wanting everyone to be okay and wanting balance and wanting fairness and wanting everyone to get along and super friendly, but it's like this battle against that of like, but this is what I'm up against and it's like I have to fight. And I think that's where the fieriness of
Mhm.
this album kind of overpowers it. And then kind of diving in a little more, the Mercury sign of this album is a Leo. And I think that's why all of the songs, or majority of the songs, come off with that angsty energy, you know?
Yeah.
But it presents itself as this like duality, which is, oh, wow.
Well, I was gonna, yeah, when you were saying the Libra part, like justice, the
Yeah.
balance, the scales, that comes to mind. And in particular, I feel like Whoa, that song really
Hmm.
gives me that like justice vibe of I feel like that's such an underrated anthem,
Yes.
like the anthem of the youth, if you will. Yeah, I mean, because the lyrics on that one, literally the first couple lines, it's I've hoped for change and it gets better every day. I've hoped for change, but still I feel the same. Like
Yeah.
a very Libra statement.
Yeah. It's, oh my gosh. It's, wow. Also, I'm looking at this, like the breakdown of the elements, and we can dive into this more again in future episodes, and we'll have guides for you all over our socials, so make sure you keep an eye out for that. There's a score of 8 on the masculine side and a score of 2 on the feminine side, like sign wise. And that's very interesting to me because if you think about, again, this period of the band where Haley was like one of the first young, like female women fronting a band at that time. And she's has not been shy about talking about what, that was like for her and how tough it was in the scene, and I think again, just thinking about this record and especially how the band has progressed over the years, there is definitely more of a masculine energy, but not in the sense of like she was like parading around like I am a man, hear me roar kind of thing, but like almost trying to be like, hey, like I belong here too, and like I could do it just as well as you can because she freaking can. But I think that comes across in the music, especially with like the aggression and the angst and like the in your face of this. Like for a debut record, like they had a lot to say
Yeah,
and
for sure.
boy did they make a statement. But to see how much masculine energy this album does carry, like to see it on the chart, it's very cool. It's very cool to see. And then as far as the elements go, six six score for fire, one score for earth, one score for air, one score for water, which again just tells us everything we need to know about the the angst that's really coming through and all of this. And you said it, like you definitely felt the fire originally in your guesses. So
We noticed, okay, so two things I'm thinking of. One, going back to the masculine, I mean, I feel like in general, that's why she's such an icon to so many women of our generation, because I think a lot of us felt that way of like, maybe we were more of like a tomboy or just wanted to fit in a very male dominated scene, but we loved it too. Like we just wanted to be accepted and included and get to enjoy
yeah,
what we loved. Oh yeah, and then I was going to say, so it's funny that we both, well, I think you got fire as well. But let's think about, right, the album cover, the freaking
the
red
red couch.
so fiery. Like of all, it's like, and I wonder why, like I've never actually looked into this, but I don't know if they've explained why they picked a red couch. But just the red, like that to me is so Leo.
It's literally the color of fire. Yeah.
And if we like, dissect it more, the background, like the grass and the blue sky, like that, it is okay. I'm so glad we're talking about the album this way, because if you think about it, like that is literally the breakdown of the signs. You have the red couch, the fire, the water, the blue kind of gives me, well, I guess
The
I was
air,
gonna
the
say the
sky.
air, but yeah, well, because was there earth? I forgot if you said there was earth in there's like
Uh,
one. Right?
there's like one, but it's not in their big three.
So I know this doesn't necessarily go with like real life, but I was going to say I feel like the blue sky gives me the water, and the grass for some reason was giving me like air um vibes. I don't know why my brain goes there, but that's
Interesting.
where it goes. But like I wonder if there'll be more albums we talk through if the art, like I don't know that they were thinking it through that way, probably not, but it just goes to show like that's why, not everyone loves astrology or believes in it. But sometimes it's kind of scary, like how, in a good way, how these things work out, and you're like, wait, that actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I feel like after seeing this chart, I need to go back and re-listen to this album, knowing what I now know,
Mhm.
and just like finding even more things that are just like, oh my God, yes, that totally makes sense, or like, oh my God, that line is such a Libra ascendant line, you know? So I can't wait to dive back into this record.
So also one song we haven't really touched on yet, but I would like to. Um, Brighter has always meant so much to me. That is such an emotional.
So not only are we spend too much time together because you're in my brain. I was looking at the list as well, and Brighter was the song I was thinking about too. And I'm like, what can I say about that song? Because that's another like sleeper for me where it's like so good. But when you ask me my favorites, I always forget to mention it. But that
Mhm.
song means I remember having that on my MySpace page for like months.
Oh
And it
no.
was like
Yeah.
not even dedicated to anyone, but like felt like I could dedicate it to someone. You know what I mean? Like you shine brighter than anyone. It's like I'm not even in love with anybody, but like I'm sending this song out to
It's so funny
you.
that you say that. So, and I'd be curious, like, how other people relate to it as well. But I mean, of course, like, it makes sense for it to be in a love capacity, that song, but I actually always got like lost from it. So that song got me through, like, when people passed. But there's definitely this, like, it's so, I've never thought about the song in that way, and I really like that.
Interesting. I haven't thought about it in that way. So again, another reason to dive back into this record and maybe come out on the other side and revisit in our next episode of the extra little tidbits we learned, you know, after diving into its chart.
Yeah, because for you, it's like you shine brighter, like, I would assume it's basically I'm looking at this person and I'm so in awe of them, which I guess,
Hmm.
it's kind of how the feeling I get as well, but it's more, oh, I wish you were still in my life.
Mm. So we now know this album's big three, and we talked through a bit of the songs. So as we begin to wrap up this episode, maybe what we can do is pick a song that represents each of the big three the most. So like what song is the Leo sun? What song is the Libra rising?
Okay, so let's do sun sign first, obviously. So you said it was a Leo sun. For me, I would say, interestingly, I kind of want to go with number one, all we know.
You know, I want to agree with you, but part of me wants to call Pressure the Leo of this album, the Leo son of this album.
Actually, yeah. Okay, so pressure. I could see that. I guess for me, all we know, I'm trying to think why I think it's a Leo. Well, what I guess give your why you feel pressure is the Leo, and that will help me.
I just think not so much as like the context of the song, the contents of the song, more so about what that song did. You know what I mean? Like it demanded attention. It was the star of the album. It was the breakout first hit for this band. It just carries the Leo energy so well, you know, and I think it brings people to the album. And when you strip everything else away, you know, despite all the favorites that we have, you know, people always go back to Pressure, or people should at least always go back to Pressure.
That's
And
true. Yeah.
for me, that's giving Leo Sun energy.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And I guess the reason why I said all we know, I think in my brain it goes back like when you say all we know, like my brain goes to the red couch. So I think that's probably why I'm getting Leo, but that's so true. Yeah, and I'd be curious to know, we should probably ask in the comments, like what is the song if you only kind of know this album? Is it Pressure? Is it Emergency? Like what is people's go-to song, you know?
Totally. Let us know. Let us know. Hit us up on our socials, leave a review. We want your input. We want to know what you think.
Actually, yeah, I think later down the line we'll be doing polls because we want to know, yeah, what your thoughts are on the big three and what we want this to be a conversation, essentially.
Definitely.
Okay, so moon sign,
Yes. Moon is Aries.
Aries.
So this is easy for me. Here We Go Again is clearly the Aries song of the record. It is such an in your face, like go getter, not taking no for an answer, uh, kind of like you said, like you wish you wrote the song to send it to an ex. Like that's giving Aries energy to me.
Yeah.
Um, and that's my statement. I'm sticking to it.
I think I have to agree with you on that. If I had to pick a second one, I might pick Emergency.
Interesting. Okay.
I feel like it's a very bold song. And we were talking about the video as well, like very bold visuals.
Hmm. So I'm gonna jump around a bit because you've sparked something, but also I've been waiting to give you my answer for Libra
Uh-huh.
ascendant. And for me, that's emergency, simply because of the line, I've seen love die way too many times when it deserved to be alive. And that just to me feels like the epitome of what's right and versus what's wrong and fairness and equality. And that just gives Libra through and through.
And Libras love love. So
Libras love love. They will defend love to the end.
that's so true. Well, actually, now that you said that, so I do know my favorite line of all time on this album is from Pressure. It is the why can't I remember what it is? Wait, hold on. The there's things I'll never wait.
Some things I'll never know. I had to let them go.
Some things I'll never know. I had to let them go. And now since that is my personal favorite line, I'm trying to think through what I feel like that's giving me like earth energy, you know, like cool, very cool, calm, collected, like very like it's
It's giving Taurus. It's
I was
giving
I was
Taurus.
gonna say Taurus. Okay, good. You know, see, this is a lesson again. You said it before. Go with your gut. Because when I said that, Taurus
Yeah.
was like right at the top of my head. Yeah, because interestingly, we haven't really talked about earth signs on this album. very
There's
much.
not many. It's, I mean, looking at the rest of their chart, so it's very, very fiery. Like their Venus, I'm saying the album, um, it's Venus is in Virgo, so there's some ground there, but like the rest of it is very, very fire heavy, very, and then maybe air at close second, but it's like by the skin of its teeth. This is a very fiery, angsty album.
Okay, so my pick for Libra, it's gotta be my heart because we were just talking about
The
um
love, love.
the love and my heart it beats for only you. Like, come on,
Mhm.
that's so Libra.
I will say though, that could also be very Scorpio because
Oh yeah,
we
that's
are loyal people. And when we find our person, our heart only beats for them and we do not share. So,
I feel like well to that point, I feel like the little scream at the end of the song that kind of
yeah.
brings that like gritty Scorpio in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, would agree with that as well.
Cool. So we've given this album a birth chart. We've discovered the big three, which again will run back. Sun is Leo, Moon is Aries, Rising is Libra. We each picked our songs that represent the big three the most. And now I think the only thing left for us to do is get off our little recording machines and go listen to this album again, knowing what we know.
Oh yes. And you listening, like please, let us know, like we said, your thoughts, your comments. We want to hear what you think the big three are. Let us know if you agree with us, if you disagree.
Yeah. And if you made it this far, thank you so much for listening. We hope you stay tuned to future episodes and please send us suggestions of other albums you'd like us to break down, other EPs, and then eventually maybe we'll even dive into movies. But for now, let's stick to music. I think it's what we know best.
It is what we know best. But yeah, I mean, we'll take suggestions, but I agree with you. Yeah, music is our heart and soul. But any band suggestions, album suggestions, yeah, send them our way.
Awesome. Thanks so much for listening to Cosmic Cadence.
See you next time.
Bye.